When you see a soldier in an Army uniform, what are your impressions? Good evening. My name is Specialist David Pippert. Thank you, Sergeant Hernandez and Sergeant Mossbach, for attending today's brief. The title of this brief is Military Bearing and Professionalism. The classification for this brief is unclassified. The agenda will be as follows. We will begin with an introduction and definition. Then we will discuss the three characteristics that contribute to having a strong military bearing. Then we'll also briefly discuss how those all tie in to bring credibility to the Army. Then we will summarize, and we will have some time at the end of this brief for any questions anyone might have. So let us begin. Today's briefing will discuss how appearance, conduct, and expertise contribute to having a strong military bearing. We will do so by first defining military bearing and professionalism, then discuss how military bearing and professionalism bring credit to the Army. To begin, what is military bearing and professionalism? Military bearing and professionalism is simply conducting oneself professionally, projecting an image of command presence and authority. To do so, one must have poise and confidence. It is the way all soldiers, regardless of rank, must conduct themselves. Military bearing and professionalism has three characteristics. The first characteristic is appearance, simply how you look. Your appearance will be the first thing people will notice. Officers, NCOs, and the general public. How does your uniform look? So, in order to project a good first impression, you must wear your uniform properly. You must make sure your name tapes and patches are on there correctly. When wearing an Army service uniform, you make sure that all your decorations, ribbons, unit citations, and your nameplate are all affixed on your uniform to the millimeter. So first impressions are extremely important, especially for our soldiers in the National Guard and Reserve component. To land that good job, you must have a good first impression. That will be the difference between landing your dream job and not getting hired. On the military side, when you conduct a squad inspection or barracks inspection, you must be squared away. And especially when you stand before a promotion board. That possibly could be the difference between being promoted and not being promoted just by simply how your uniform appears. When you wear your uniform, you are communicating non-verbally. You can walk into a room full of strangers with your uniform squared away on, and that will be the first thing people will notice without saying a word. For references on how to wear your uniform properly and all the details that come along with it, refer to AR 670-1, the Wear and Appearance of Uniforms and Insignia, and DAPAM 670-1, the Guide to the Wear of Uniforms and Insignias. Now that we have put our uniform on, let us move on to the second characteristic of military bearing and professionalism. Conduct. Conduct is simply how we act. We can communicate both verbally and non-verbally just by simply how we carry ourselves. And it is all a reflection of our attitude. Our body language, demeanor, facial expression, eye contact, and posture all reflect our attitude. Also, what will help us reflect a positive attitude about ourselves by simply living by the Army values. Having respect, having integrity, and especially selfless service. It also helps with conveying good customs and courtesies positively. For example, when you salute an officer, You are the first to render the salute. Then the officer will extend his salute to you. He is the first to drop his salute. Then you drop your salute by going back to a position of attention. When properly addressing an NCO, you will do so from a position of parade rest. You'll be at attention, and then you will snap to parade rest. Then the NCO will say, at ease, or as you were. Then you will just simply snap back to a position of attention. This is a sign of respect for officers and NCOs, and it all reflects upon a positive attitude. Now that we have put on our uniforms properly, and now have appropriately conducted ourselves, we now move on to our third and final characteristic of military bearing, and that is expertise. Expertise is knowing what you are doing and doing it well. To do so, you must do so with competence. Competence is the effective ability to lead and accomplish tasks to standard decisively. It is, again, also knowing what you're doing. And how do we improve our expertise and competence? We do so by attaining more education. Having more education improves our current skills, and it also helps us acquire new skills, which contributes to versatility. The Army is always looking for individuals that exhibit great versatility. And the third point under expertise will be discipline. Discipline is simply just being in the right place, on time, in the right uniform. It is doing your job and getting your job done in a timely manner, on time and to standards. Especially for leaders, they must be the first to be disciplined and to be able to project an air of command presence and authority by not only setting the example, but by being the example. They show what right looks like to subordinates. And that is also a high expectation placed upon us by our NCOs and our officers. By having competence, by increasing your education, and by maintaining your discipline, you develop even more confidence. And with more confidence, it is far easier to project that when you have more confidence. Now that we have discussed the three characteristics that come up that contribute to strong military bearing and professionalism, we now will discuss how military bearing and professionalism brings credit to the Army. It all starts at the individual level. The 10th line of the Soldier's Creed reads, I am an expert and I am a professional. The very first line of the NCO Creed reads, no one is more professional than I. And then the fourth line of the Drill Sergeant's Creed reads, I will insist that each soldier meet and maintain the Army standards of military bearing and courtesy consistent with the highest traditions of the U.S. Army. At the unit level, every soldier is expected to conduct themselves with a strong military bearing, especially when assuming a role of leadership. When leaders project military bearing with the characteristics mentioned, they bring credit to their units. When squads and platoons accomplish tasks within a company, for example, they contribute to the unit's mission accomplishment. When every unit accomplishes their mission, they effectively bring credit to the United States Army. People in general have ideas of how soldiers should look and act. A majority of those ideas come from TV shows or movies. A quote from Command Sergeant Major Naaman Garrett from the Army University Press has quoted, and that is Command Sergeant Major Naaman Grimmett from the 1st Heavy Brigade Combat Team, 1st Infantry Division, understanding that their military bearing will define the way in which other leaders, soldiers, and the world views them. accepting that military bearing does not end at the end of the duty day when the uniform is removed. Often the only contact the civilian population has with the soldier is during off-duty hours. This is when they will make their judgment and opinion about soldiers and the Army in general. To summarize, we have defined military bearing and professionalism. We have discussed the three characteristics that contribute to having a strong military bearing. And we have also discussed how those contribute to bringing overall credibility to the Army. To close out, people may not always believe what you say, but they will almost always believe what you do, how you look, how you act. Military bearing and professionalism will always leave a lasting impression. Don't you want it to be good? The choice is yours. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you all for being here today. This concludes my brief.